Donald Trump's name has apparently been redacted from the Epstein files. The numerous instances where his name appeared, according to reporting, where Donald Trump was notified about his name being all over the Epstein files in May. Apparently, when his name's on it now, they've redacted it, or they've blacked it out, or removed the name from the Epstein files. And then they're, as you know, deep sixing those files and not releasing it. Then Donald Trump said the entire files are a hoax that were created by his political enemies against him. So that's one data point right there. The next is Ghislaine Maxwell, as part of this sweetheart deal with the Department of Justice. She moved facilities. She was in a prison serving a 20-year sentence for sex trafficking in Tallahassee, Florida. She was brought to Camp Bryan's prison facilities, a minimum security facility in Southeast Texas, where she had to get a special exemption to be able to be moved because she is a convicted sex trafficker who would not allowed to be in the Southeast prison in Southeast Texas. So the Trump regime went for, we're going to give the death penalty to sex traffickers, or because Donald Trump's trying to now cover all of this up, we're going to allow her to go to a minimum security facility. And I don't even think has a prison guard there. So we have that data point. Also this week, there was the CBS news report that they had a forensic audit of the surveillance footage of Epstein's cell that the Trump DOJ released. And they're like, we're not even sure this angle captures the Epstein cell based on all of the information that we know. We don't think that's even the cell area, and that this footage also seems to be further manipulated than just the 2 minutes that Wired, the company Wired reported on. The 2 minutes seem to be deleted or so. One of the things that CBS pointed out is if you looked at the full footage, you could see a computer mouse go into it. So it's not, were they filming a computer image of part of the tapes, or what the hell was going on there? So you have all of that going on. Then, of course, earlier in the week, Donald Trump talked about how little girls were stolen from Mar-a-Lago by Epstein. He referred to it as his help was stolen by Epstein. And he was asked, you mean like Virginia Giuffre, like the underage girl who was sex trafficked by Epstein? Yeah, that was one of them. And then he did it again. He stole them. He stole them from me. All right, Harry Litman, let's bring you in. Harry Litman from Talking Feds, former top federal prosecutor. You ran the Western District of Pennsylvania's prosecutorial office there for the feds. You were a top DOJ in Main Justice in Washington, D.C. I mean, these redactions of Trump's name combined with Ghislaine Maxwell being moved to this facility in Southeast Texas with like no guard, and she had to get the exemption. And then you add on top of it the additional information about the surveillance footage. Whatever's in these files must be horrific, number one. Number two, though, Harry, this is bad stuff. And to me, the question is, and I guess Trump has absolute immunity, but what about all these other people out there? I mean, this looks to me, I won't go there yet, but very wrong, we'll just say for now. What are you seeing, Harry?
Yeah, well, the thing you mentioned at the end is there's some criminal conspiracy afoot to obstruct justice. Everything about this, Ben, is so weird. And I mean, so weird by Trump standards, so weird by DOJ standards. It's off the charts, and it's not a surprise that everything they're doing is not doing much just to slake the curiosity of all the people who want to know what was going on. Let me start with Maxwell. It's something I know a fair bit about. This, when you deal with federal prisoners for whatever reason, it's basically their first request. Get me into one of these nice facilities. They call them club feds that I've heard about. And Maxwell from the start has been complaining about where she is housed. But as you say, I mean, I've actually dealt with requests, and it's something that first can be done completely within DOJ. Nobody has to ask anyone. You reach out to the Bureau of Prisons. But in this case, because she is a convicted sex offender, she's just not eligible, period, to be in a so-called minimum security prison as opposed to maximum and low. They could have transferred her to low. Minimum is just against the rules. Her offense level is too high unless the head of the BOP signs off. Now, the chances that just by coincidence, the head of the BOP said, why don't we transfer this notorious inmate to the relatively cushy confines of Club Fed? Zero are those chances. Even if they were asked to consider it, she is a radioactive prisoner and everyone knows it. So I think even though it's circumstantial, the circumstances are close to airtight, that this is a perk for an early return for her presumably favorable testimony toward Trump. Who knows what she could be induced to say? And of course, the Deputy Attorney General of the United States himself went to interview her, possibly without anyone there. So it's just, he's certainly playing it safe that nothing will get out. But is she already indicating, I can say that Trump was there, but they knew each other, but they, contrary to what many other witnesses are now coming forward and saying, they weren't so palsy. There's no way to construe this other than a perk, a gift, probably something that Maxwell asked for very first thing. It is if you're going to be a federal prisoner, this is definitely where you want to be serving. Club Fed is a little bit of a, I'd say exaggeration. I've been to minimum security prisons, but they look, not that different from college dorms, just as you say. So this is probably her dearest wish. And it had to have been through the good offices of the Deputy Attorney General, and that had to have been a kind of down payment for services rendered, and that had to have been services rendered to Donald Trump, the person, not the United States, which is the only business that the Deputy Attorney General should be pursuing. So dirty business for sure. All right, the redactions. What the hell? Why are we finding out now is my initial question. This happens apparently back in March. I think it's in May that Bondi informs Trump that his name shows up in the files and several times at least. We don't know her exact words, but that's when things begin to change. That's when Trump becomes unenthused about sending these out. That's when Bondi, probably falling on her sword, says, oops, did I say list? I didn't mean list. I meant pissed. That's what I meant. Yeah, people are mad. It's never been a persuasive explanation. And now, what the hell? It's apparently, the FOIA crowd that's doing this. Very hard to unredact redactions. Whether this will be a future kind of, I wish we could reveal, but we just can't, remains to be seen. But again, all of these maneuvers are not calculated, it seems to me, to actually assuage the people who are really demanding to see what's in there. So I think the hope, this is kind of the same thing with the grand jury, which was a bogus maneuver. We know there's nothing in there that has anything to do with what people are looking for. So, I think the hope is just to be able to plead some kind of legal impediment, say we tried, sorry guys, move on. To date, those stratagems haven't worked that well, but if they throw up enough of them and enough time passes, maybe. And the fact that they're trying so hard, not to mention some of the other things they're doing to divert attention, shows you that they certainly are worried about political or legal or both fallout from these files, and really the situation's been bungled pretty badly. And of course, what they're doing has everything to do with what they know themselves about what the files will reveal. But mess gets messier and then gets messier still. And the Maxwell deal, Ben, no doubt, is just, something that prisoners would line up for by the thousands. And Ghislaine Maxwell, a convicted sex offender, notorious crimes. She herself participated in some of the sex abuse, goes to the front of the line. And it has to be because of something that the Deputy Attorney of the United States thinks can be done in the personal political interests of the president. That stinks to high heaven.
Yep. I think about Watergate, and I think about, the files that Nixon was going after, and that led to his resignation, right? And every day Trump does 10 things that are worse than Watergate. But this one's also a nuclear bomb version of a Watergate right here. And to your point, the question raised is, can there be a criminal conspiracy taking place? And then the next question becomes, well, after Donald Trump's out of office, can he make that claim of absolute immunity here? Because this is kind of a personal deal at this point now for him. The Epstein stuff predates the term in the White House. He's covering up now for what he did before he was in office. And the question becomes, as we look at, is he tampering with files that are part of lawfully issued subpoenas from Congress and otherwise right now? Is that subject to the absolute immunity? If those questions get asked down the road, is this that outer limit conduct that the Supreme Court has, ridiculously given to him? Or does this fall outside of it? It's an interesting question. I'll let you opine quickly before we go, but I think that there is a question there. What do you think, Harry?
I just think there's so much between here and there. I think it's first, and it's really dominant to what's going on in the White House, and singular because of the stickiness of it being the MAGA forces who care so deeply about this. A political question. You're seeing some in Congress actually tiptoe away from him somewhat on this. If there were really the kind of stomach to do something big, you would potentially bring, a third impeachment. But to me, all of it is just a mystery and a riddle and an enigma. What they're doing makes no sense for him. And yet maybe it makes sense depending what's there, but it's seemingly been bungled. But I think basically the dominant question is and will remain, will the political clamor to release continue unabated, notwithstanding all the moves they are making? And will, that potentially affect the Republicans' fortunes in 26, affect his, presidency overall, even, put him on the, slide toward a definitively failed presidency. All of this stuff is just right now so murky. And of course, in the hands of people who will do everything they can to, obscure, suppress, protect the president and probably themselves.
Harry Litman from the Talking Feds YouTube channel, Talking Feds podcast, and Talking Feds Substack. Thanks for joining us here. As always, everybody, make sure you subscribe to Harry's channels. On YouTube, search Talking Feds. On podcast, search Talking Feds. On Substack, search Talking Feds. Thanks, Harry.
Thank you, Ben.
Can't get enough Meidas? Check out the Meidas Plus Substack for ad-free articles, reports, podcasts, daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, and more. Sign up for free now at MeidasPlus.com.